Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are here today with IDEA and IFMA, and what we're going to be doing is talking about applying IoT technologies and space reservation tools to meet your ESG and sustainability goals. As you are settling in and we're about to get started, please let us know where you're joining us from. Again, I'm Kim. I'm with IFMA, and I'm joining you from Houston, Texas. So if we can go ahead and add Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Lisa
Hello,
is joining
Kim.
us. She's joining us today as our moderator. So she's got a lot of interesting things in store with us and our presenters today. So Lisa, I'm going to turn everything over to you.
Thank you so much. Just delighted to be here and so excited for this topic because many of you may know that the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, just this week shared news that we continue to hear, and sometimes it can feel like there's not much hope, but there is, because what the good news was that came out of that is the tools that we need to successfully fight climate change exist. And today's conversation is going to share some fabulous tools and some excellent experts in this world to really help all of us be more successful. So I couldn't be more than delighted to share our three panelists, introduce them to you. We have John Wang, CEO of IDEA. He has more than 20 years experience helping businesses transform their physical spaces with digital signage and IoT technologies. We've got Billy Hawkins, Director of Solution Consulting, EMS, at Accruent, 12 years of industry and subject matter experience around space management, utilization, and business intelligence. Great to have you here too, Billy. And Erica Ryback, CPA, partner, real estate strategy at PwC, who leads the real estate strategy and transformation practice and has been with PwC for 17 years. So thank you all so much for being here, and we're grateful for the audience who has tuned in as well. We're going to kick it right off with a question, and how we're doing today is there'll be one question posed, and each person will take a couple minutes to answer it. We also have Menti for polling. We've got a couple polling questions. We really would love to hear the audience's engagement and participation in this. So hopefully you can scan that QR code and join us. So I'm going to start with you, John. First question. What roles do IoT, and I am a big one for making sure everybody knows the acronyms and the letters. IoT is an Internet of Things. What roles do IoT and space reservation technologies play in helping facility managers achieve sustainability goals? And how do energy efficiency technologies reduce an organization's environmental impact?
Thank you, Lisa. That's a mouthful as a question. So thank you for that introduction in the beginning. And as Lisa said, I lead a company, IDEA, and we've been in the technology space to help businesses transform their physical space using digital technology. We've been deploying digital signage as a means of communication, and also nowadays more IoT and sensor to help enterprises, campuses modernize their space, get more efficiency and productivity out of it. And these days, I think in almost all the conversations, sustainability just is an unavoidable topic that keeps coming up. And this is where we think we can play the role of applying the right technologies, help clients really achieve their sustainability goals and reduce their carbon footprint. And there are several ways that we're helping our clients, and today I want to just quickly share three of those. One of the things that since COVID happened is that we've seen a steady decline in utilization rate of commercial real estate in office spaces. Obviously nowadays we've gotten used to flexible work, and we could work anywhere we want. So a lot of us are preferring, to stay home, being in the office a partial time, only partially in a week. So from the latest I was actually asking ChatGPT this morning. So the latest number seems like the average office vacancy right now across the U.S. is around 16%, and this is up from single digit before COVID. And in some of the larger cities like San Francisco, New York, the numbers are above 20%. Um, so this is a terrible waste of space. And if you think about it, so a lot of the spaces still have lighting on, still have air conditioning on, and all those energies are burning without a good cause. So one of the obvious ways that we could reduce energy use, reduce carbon footprint, is just by automatically figuring out which spaces are being used and eliminate power consumption in areas where no one is is really operating in. Um, so this is an obvious shortcut. Another thing that we found, we also work with EMS, Billy here, applying their space reservation software to the digital signage panels that we produce, and provide an integrated solution to help people reserve their space when they want to visit the office. And by having that information beforehand, so we have reservation before an actual physical visit, we can effectively schedule and lighting, schedule air conditioning at just the right time. For example, instead of having air conditioning constantly on, we can have it turned on automatically 15 minutes before a meeting is about to start, just to get the room cool down enough or warm up enough for the next meeting. And also we are able to automatically shut off those devices after a meeting ends. So that's utilizing information that we know from their space booking systems, the meeting room booking systems. Um, and one last part that we're helping client with in terms of technology is that we're also introducing more energy efficient ways to achieve um, the goals in the workplace. For example, when we first, I still remember, I started a company about 20 years ago. When we first put out visual information for corporate internal communication. Those times we were using like big TV cubes, and each one of those, I mean, they get pretty hot, and they could get the whole room pretty warm just by having a TV set there. So that was consuming lots and lots of power, and slowly they were replaced by LCD screens. And nowadays there are e-paper technologies that consume almost no power. They could operate from batteries, and we're seeing companies looking for that kind of energy efficient means to achieve the same goals that they want to apply to their spaces. So, for example, one of the things that we're working with EMS on is to provide a desk reservation system for individual desks that runs on e-paper technology. So for those systems, you could have, so think about your supermarket price tag being mounted next to your table, showing your name when you're scheduled to go into the office. So technology like that can operate very efficiently on batteries for years without needing to recharge or replenish the power source. And also they require no wiring, so installation is super easy. So I guess so these are the three ways. Also, one is increasing space utilization by having reservation information, and also two is connecting the energy systems so they could be optimized accordingly according to need. And the third is really applying more energy efficient technologies to cut down our carbon footprint. So those are my sharings. Billy,
Fantastic.
yeah. So I think yeah, we have lots in common. So maybe you could expand on what I started with.
Yeah,
What I
for
started with.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you, John. So, in my experience working in mostly in software regarding space reservation technologies, IoT, energy efficiency is almost a number one category for facilities managers, building supervisors, lease administrators. It's a large amount of their business capital, right? How they're spending their money, how they're using their space, And as you mentioned, John, during COVID, a lot of things had to change in order to make ends meet and to understand how the world was changing. But for both large and smaller organizations, there are several impact goals around sustained efficiency. This could be something looking at it on paper monetarily. It could be physical space that needs to be reevaluated. It could be structure, right? Building or removing space that may or may not be necessary now that the world has changed a little bit. As you mentioned as well, we have some considerations from our both our customers and the industry around flex space. What are people doing with the empty spaces? Why is that? Why does that even matter? We already own it, or we're already leasing it. What's the big deal? Those kind of things. But most of it really does start with two considerations. It's about getting the initial information about the space and then reducing the utilization impact, whether that be environmentally, monetarily, or physically. Um, the ways that that can be done in depending of course on the size of your space and what your abilities to manage your own space are, could be anything from simple solutions like software packages provided by companies like Accruent, where we do space reservation and we give reporting. It could be things like physical alterations of the space, or introducing technology like IDEA has, where you can put in IoT information and as Lisa said, the Internet of Things technology such as sensors, room signs, interactive devices, kiosks, etc. But when we talk about those things, there are some goals that organizations try to reach to meet their energy efficiency needs. And that could be something in the area of LEED certifications or other kind of accolades that tell the world that they are both promoting a positive impact on the environment and what they see, as well as individually reducing their own carbon footprint or environmental impact. Um, Most of that, in my experience, has been done through the use of software and reporting, HVAC integrations, or lighting, heating, and VC technology integrations often support a lot of what people do to reduce that impact. Some things that we often see within that industry before we even get into the analytics part is areas of interest around applying technology that can, as John said, actually control situations for you to move the human element and the recourse of checking everything and double checking everything out of the equation and letting the software do it to get the maximum efficiency. And that can be something as simple as, if the system through software knows that based on flex space, for example, your organization won't have as many people in the office, they can reduce an area's lighting or heating or temperature control. They can turn off normally on or passive systems like video conference units, televisions, etc., just to reduce that immediate impact. And that does add up. Somebody sitting at your house, you may not think that leaving a light on in your bathroom overnight as a nightlight or whatever has an impact. But if you think about a building that has maybe 400 of those on at any given point, random number, of course, but that 30 cents a day that uses, and the amount of carbon that consumes or expels based on whatever energy source you're coming from really does add up fast. And when you're in high dense cities like New York, Chicago, Detroit, all of that impact really does matter. The city looks at it, the state looks at it, governmental and environmental organizations all consider and care about that. So I guess in my experience, a lot of resolution from that using space reservations and IoT technologies really do create an impact on both your bottom line as well as the environment. Erica, do you have any thoughts on that?
Awesome. Thanks, Billy.
Mm-hmm.
So at PwC, I work with clients on, things that you mentioned, John and Billy: portfolio optimization, return to work, and workplace strategy. And really, due to hybrid working and a focus on sustainability, identifying opportunities for a more efficient real estate portfolio by decreasing footprint and reducing utilities consumption is one of the main priorities for all of our clients, hands down. Lease payments and utilities, particularly the electricity and gas that you guys were talking about, are a significant portion of our clients' overall real estate OpEx. So, of course, the less you occupy, the less you pay for rent, and the less utilities you consume. So we've been working with our clients to implement these connected devices and sensors that you guys have been bringing up, and helping them collect that required data to make these proactive, data-driven decisions that have an environmental impact and reduce cost implications. These technologies are used to identify how their space is being used, what are the hotspots, where do people gravitate to, are there certain floors, certain spaces? And then this information then allows those organizations to really think about, is it worth keeping these floors or these spaces? Is there a way to navigate people to certain areas, helping to reduce the space demand, which results in that reduced footprint and reduced energy consumption by that decrease in HVAC, lighting, airflow in certain areas which just aren't being used. And then just to call out, in addition to our clients, PwC as well is also implementing end user devices and data collection software to reduce our own footprint and reduce energy consumption. We've been implementing sensors to really understand how the space is used and how much space do we really need. And we're closing off certain floors, certain areas, Fridays to Mondays, and early mornings, late nights, to really reduce that HVAC, lighting, and airflow based on specific occupancy. You probably even see the lights turn off during this meeting when I stand too still and they think no one's in here anymore. One other topic, a little bit different than what we've been talking about, but it's been coming up a lot in this space, is thinking about office location and space use, is commuter patterns. One of the main reasons we're hearing why people aren't coming into the office as often is it takes too long to get to work. And so we've been helping clients look at where our employees located, of course, all anonymous. We don't have people's names, linked to addresses, but we can see where people are commuting from, and based on traffic patterns can calculate how long it takes them to get to the office. So we're identifying maybe closer central locations for people to get to. And why clients like this is they see that the offices are being used more, but then they're also getting a reduced travel emission from the lessened employees' commute, which is in alignment to those companies' overall climate and reporting goals. So I'll hand it back to Lisa.
Fantastic, Erica. It's really awesome to also hear how you at PwC are not just helping your clients, but applying it to your own use of space and closing things down to maximize occupancy. I'd read something recently, a couple weeks ago, I think, where a company had done just that, really with intention, closing 2 of their 8 floors of their building certain days of the week, not just on the weekends, but to really get people to move and work differently. And it's so much, as you just said, Erica, also is tied to behavior, isn't it? New behavior and habit patterns. Very, very interesting comments from all of you. So I think we have our first poll question ready that we can all access, which I'm going to play along too, because I think Menti is fun. So hopefully folks have had a chance to scan the QR code, or you can also see at the top of the screen there, it says menti.com and the code number. So you could go right into it. And thank you very much. There's our little QR code. Again, for anybody who didn't yet connect, and I'm one of those. So as our responses are coming in, the question, how are IoT and space reservation technologies helping your facilities achieve sustainability goals? And you've got 6 different places to choose from there. Let's take a look at the results coming in, but I invite John and Billy and Erica, any reflections that you have as you see these comments come in, or any personal experience you have, or any guess. What do you think is going to win? We didn't do any bets beforehand. Maybe we should have.
Lisa, I did want to mention, you were talking about how, you read that they were closing floors down. I think cost is one thing, but even just the experience, you go into the office and nobody's sitting on that floor. It's not a great experience. And you're like, why did I come in? So even just having more people in those lesser floors just provides a much better experience, a much better vibe for employees to go to. So, double whammy on that.
So true, right? I always describe it as like going to a party where the room's too big and it's just no energy and it doesn't feel like fun. You'd rather be I'm not saying you want to pack everybody in, but you definitely feel that energy and that vibe.
Erica, that's exactly what happens with our own company, Accruent. We have a New Orleans office, and we have 3 floors, and we've reduced that during the midweek to 1 floor. And using both idea panels and our own software, we allow our employees to choose their desk when they want to come in. But doing so, and by restricting the desks just to a certain pod or section, we're engaging collaboration and sustainability both on our side, but also we're giving people that feeling of, yes, there are actually people here and it's worth going into the office, not just to be productive, but also that social aspect that some people crave, right? There's definitely the human aspect that sometimes gets lost in conversations like this, where it's just about, if everything's hyper efficient, we'd all work from home and have solar panels, but that's not what the world is about, right? So, and to your point, Lisa, my guess was that reduced energy and better understanding would have been the 2 top ones. And I feel like I'm right so far, but there's more coming in. So I think that's interesting.
No, I think absolutely you are on target. And I also want to recommend that anybody listening, please feel free to reach out to John, Billy, and Erica directly. I know you'll find their contact info, easily find them on LinkedIn. There's nothing like these personal stories that you're sharing. I think they're even more powerful than your client stories. So I know that you've got so much great information to share. All right, well, let's take a look here at the responses. So yeah, we've got 27% better understand occupancy patterns and optimize space usage. Then we have 23% improved resource management, and then the 20% at reduced energy consumption and waste in our facilities. Super. So thank you all for participating in that polling question. We're going to hop to the next question that we have for our panelists, and just making sure we've got a couple of comments coming in and questions, but I think we're good to keep moving forward, and we will have time at the end to take some of these questions that have come in. So our next question, which I'm going to have Billy tee up first to get us started. So how can space reservation technologies be used as data collection tools to help organizations in making critical decisions regarding sustainability and efficiency? What we were just sort of chatting about. Billy, take it away.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This is actually a great question, and this is one that is brought to the attention of my organization regularly. I'm not going to make you read the entire slide here. I'm just going to pull out some bullet points on it, but when people are searching for software and hardware management solutions, the main answer or the main question that we often get is, what is the retainability of reporting? What can I get out of a tool that will tell me how to make informed decisions or allow my teams to make decisions around site planning and energy efficiency and reducing our footprint? All of those kind of the questions that obviously are around this topic today, but also, how do I get that information into a format that makes sense for somebody to actually utilize that data? And many organizations have that unfortunate gap where either they have disparate systems that aren't talking to each other. You have an HVAC system that you're paying utility on that you don't know when it's going on, when it's going off. You have, as Erica said, we have people that are coming into the office. We don't necessarily track that information individually, or we're not tracking specific logins, logouts. So we're not seeing the impact of usage and utilization of your space. We're not seeing a lot of the transactions that occur or the facilities management systems from work orders, repair, etc. So that lack of reporting or the vacancy of the space from just lack of information is allowing customers to, unfortunately, waste a lot of both dollars and energy. Ways that can solve for that to use data analytics, and that can be done through both hardware and software. We find that particular information is captured in one of 4 ways. And we generalize it, but of course there's a lot more technology behind it, but we do generalize it into 4 ways. The first one is passive, right? And this is the concept that most organizations use when they're exploring their technology. It's they've made assumptions about the space, they know their per square footage use or dollar amount, and they make assumptions on known factors. We assume that 5 days out of the week, X number of percentage of people are going to come into the space. The next one is more about kind of active response. Facilities or leaders that have implemented some form of reservation system to, at the very least, track incoming information. Who's building out reservations? Who's booking desks? Who's walking in the door? Based on your employees providing you information, reservations data, etc. The third one, being a reactive kind of answer, is more what spaces and what this conversation is about, where people are actually looking at check-ins, using hardware to allow users to interact with your utilization reporting to say, yes, I am actually here. Um, Validating that the reservation was real, doing what I often call the naughty list, right? Where people don't show up to their appointment or they don't show up to their desk. If we don't know that because we don't have some kind of active or proactive response, then we're not getting that data back. So you're getting invalid data. The fourth one, of course, being automatic. And this is really where energy efficiency and human interaction can take a step back and allow the reporting to do its job. And that comes into play with John's technology, where we're talking about IoT aspects and software aspects from companies like ours, where we can interact together with your motion sensors, heat sensors, occupancy sensors, check-in panels, QR codes, all of those different things that will automatically inject information into various reporting, utilization, and analytics tools that will give us answers that we can take forward and build out some smart decisions in our building choice. That could be reacting to HVAC, as we said earlier, where a utilization report coming from an IoT sensor that says there are only 4 people in a space that can normally support 300, maybe I can zone out my HVAC and reduce some footprint there. Or conferencing areas where they're unused, there's no reservation base, and we haven't seen motion in those, we can shut them down for the day, as Erica said that they do on the weekends across the board. All of those things can manage those automatic responsive kind of items, but all of that then gets data collected, right? It goes into a report, into utilization information, and that can be taken away for facilities leaders or organizations as a whole to make better decisions going forward on how they want to architect their market. And I will just say that we've noticed a lot of this being, come to the forefront when people had to make some very difficult or well, I'll just say difficult decisions on what they do with their space in the 2 years that everything was shut down, right? Mm-hmm. So moving forward and deciding whether or not you want to reinvent your space or reutilize different areas for different purposes, all of that requires reporting, and all of the tools that can be offered around software and IoT do nothing but help that. There is, of course, initial investment costs, and that's to be expected, but beyond that, most of it is an immediate return. We're seeing 1 to 12x return within the first 9 months in most cases, where people install a hardware or software product that can help drive utilization reporting and analytics for them. So with that big mouthful of information, I'll hand it off to Erica for more detail.
All right. Thanks, Billy. To add on, I'd like to call out 3 areas in which space reservation in conjunction with energy management tools can be leveraged. So pretty simple. First one is to determine how efficiently space is being used. Second, the ability to normalize energy consumption intensity based on that efficiency. So the kilowatt hours per square foot that are used, meaning in layman's terms, how much could or should be consumed. And then ultimately the ability to benchmark a building against a typical office building in that same area. Our benchmarking source is CBEX. It's a commercial building energy consumption survey. And that's where we're able to see, what the typical consumption use is for different areas. So maybe to just get a little bit further into this benchmarking process, we first gather the utility data, electric and gas, on a 12-month basis. And then we can very quickly identify whether this office is consuming less or more than a typical building in the area. If less, great. But if more, we'll identify different measures which can be undertaken to reduce energy consumption. And we talked about a lot of them already today, but how we kind of break them out is no cost. So just adjusting the lighting or the HVAC schedules. Can you identify when to heat and cool appropriately based on who's there and the time of day, as well as the brightness of your lights? A low cost measure could be just replacing the light bulbs with LEDs, replacing those TVs that are producing a lot of heat that John was talking about earlier. And then there are high cost measures that are very efficient, but such as replacing base building systems, boilers, chillers, motors, etc. Benchmarking these utilities consumption does help our clients achieve their three major goals. And so that's how we think about it. It's enhancing efficiency, reducing costs, and reducing carbon. So a quick example, maybe just to bring this to life a little bit, that we worked on with one of our clients. They were a national healthcare system. They had offices, clinics, hospitals, and as you can imagine, they're running 24/7, high utilities consumption, and typically quite inefficient. So they had 25 million square feet in footprint and about 550 million in OpEx. So just looking at the utilities numbers, we were able to identify 10 to 15%, and there goes the lights. So we were able to identify 10 to 15% in savings on those utilities, which was about 10 million, just from doing that benchmarking analysis of collecting the data and assessing it. John, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, thank you, Erica, and also for that live demo of that light sensor. That actually works. And I want to maybe get back a little bit on the survey results that we just had, the first round. It's pretty much similar to what I expected, that most of the audience has already experimented with some kind of a sensor technology, which is great. I think this is a great starting point. It's a great way to collect data on your space usage and start to understand where you could find ways to optimize. And sensor coupled with lighting control, for example, it's a great tool to save electricity. I also wanted to link that a little bit to, I think, in the comments, and also I think all three speakers touched on that we want to use technology to avoid having employees making the effort to go back to the office and finding that he or she is the only one in that space on a given day. We want to try to aggregate people, and so to create a sense of community. And this is where I think space reservation systems that we're talking about actually can help a lot here. And we know there are software tools out there now that make it really easy for, almost in a way, automate your decision-making process on which day of the week that you would need to go back, just based on your Teams meeting, Zoom meeting connections, figuring out who your coworkers are and when they are making a reservation to go back to the office. And then the system will make a suggestion that you might want to go back on the same day. And when you arrive in the office, it's easy now for systems to suggest, while you're in the office, you might want to meet up with this colleague that you have regular, meetings with, because he or she is in the office on that given day. So these are more advanced ways to use technology that a simple sensor can't deliver. And I would, since there are so many comments in the chat room around that the community theme, I would recommend everyone to take one step forward. Sensors is a great place to start. I think if you step up to resource reservation, as we had as one of the choices in the survey, I think you're going to gain a lot from the technology. And coming back to collecting the data and using that to drive sustainability. I think Erica, Billy also touched on that. We have clients that are using technology to understand the occupancy, almost in a dynamic way of a given day. And they will have digital signage at entrances to direct people, recommend people to go to floors where they're going to find more people so they could more easily meet with others. And also, in a way, digital signage can indicate which floors are closed for that given day dynamically based on reservation alone. So using reservation data, we find reserving, well, cutting down on wasted energy in empty spaces. It's a great application. The other is by collecting information from reservation from sensors. We have clients that are using that to understand what the type of space that's being needed for a given type of work. For example, some organizations or some teams prefer to have smaller meeting rooms for their teamwork when they go back to the office. But there are also teams that prefer to have individual desks. And by collecting data, buildings can reorganize itself around the actual need. And that's also a great way to reduce space. The worst thing that you could do is you allocate a space with the format that the employees don't find useful. And when they and actually for the spaces that they need, when they go into the office, they find that space is always occupied. Um, and the last part, I want to share something that's very interesting that we found among our clients when they try to use a reservation system. We hear, some of them complain when they try to deploy a reservation system that the system doesn't work. People don't use the system, or people don't check in even when after they made a reservation. It's just there's an extra friction that they need to overcome to sort of take advantage of the system. And it's almost a downhill effect once people start to feel that the information they get from the reservation system is not trustworthy. The less trustworthy it is, the less likely that they're going to make that effort to make a reservation. And a easy way that we found to address that issue is actually having one of the reservation panels visibly placed outside of the reservable space. It acts almost as a traffic light, so people can visually glance across the space and figure out which spaces are taken. And also that almost encourages people. That's Billy's, right?
Nope.
Okay, you
Not
took
this
care
time.
of it already. All right. So having that traffic light outside of meeting rooms actually encourages people to check in when they're actually using the room, because you don't want to be seen in a room that's marked as available when you're actually using it. So that having that extra indicator makes a reservation system more, I would say, more practical. And in return, once people start to feel that the system is actually helping them find available spaces, they want to use it more. It's just a sharing about how all these technologies actually come together and encourage people to use the technology and really help us, streamline the work experience in those spaces. So maybe I'll bring back to Lisa.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, John, because that is often one of the resistances that we hear and people experience. So thank you for sharing that positive example of how that obstacle can be overcome. The other thing that I think is quite interesting is the idea, these are new habits. We've all had to create so many new habits through the pandemic, whether it was wearing a mask or sanitizing hands more often, or many different habits. And the habit of reservation is another one. But there's something called habit stacking. And this is from the work of James Clear, who wrote one of my all-time favorite books, Atomic Habits. Because when I look at the workplace, I think it's all about habits, really. And habit stacking is when you have one new habit that you had to create, and then you add another one onto it. And it's actually a way that can help people adopt new practices. So great conversation. I think we've got another Menti poll ready for us, for our audience to jump into. And while people are responding to that, we did have a question earlier, and maybe Erica, I can pop this one over to you while folks are answering this Menti poll. Has the impact post-COVID changed the processes of your organizations, or is it just a short-term reaction? And this was specifically asked of Erica.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. For PwC specifically, we were already on the trend to hybrid working. So we had implemented hoteling before COVID, and people were either at client site or in the office. But what did change post COVID is that flexible working of when do you come in, and when you are in, you're not just sitting at your desk all day. You're moving around the space. So a lot of the space reservation and sensors became really important to understand, well, what space are people using? And then we went through the process of downsizing our footprint because we actually didn't need a lot of the excess space anymore. And just to point out, we too are continuously learning. We just had a meeting the other day about our New York office and how to navigate people to certain areas so that we can continue off to like close off more floors, because we're finding that people are kind of spread out sporadically between our 10 floors. So it's a long-term process for us that we're continuously iterating on, bringing in data, bringing in technology to inform those go forward decision making.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And let's take a look at some of the responses that we've received here. So any surprises here? It looks like, and if folks had written other, they're welcome to put that in the comments in the chat if they had indicated other. But we've got them all roughly looking the same there. A sensor to collect data for analysis, space reservation system to optimize office usage, and smart lighting HVAC control. Anything?
Well, I found it
Yeah.
interesting regarding space reservation systems, because it seems like there are two different experiences. That I mean, there's a very high vote on that being the most effective technology. Also, I think there is also another group that's slightly less than happy. I think it's slightly towards the left. There's a slight bump. I would recommend those of you finding space reservation not working for you, try to put some traffic lights outside the rooms and see if that helps you to gain more effectiveness. It has worked in our experience.
I would contribute that a lot of times with organizations, when they're exploring their options and negotiating whether or not hardware is a solution for them, that they try software first on their own. And what sometimes occurs is they're using a software package purposed for something else in order to try to supplement what their real goals are. For example, using Outlook bookings or Outlook reservations in lieu of an actual software solution to manage and utilize your space is a great way to track occupancy, but not really great for reporting and utilization. So sometimes the effectiveness of those tools gets lost when, and as was mentioned before, if you increase difficulty in the ability to use those tools, you lack adoption from the teams that need to use them in order to get that data, right? So if you're enforcing a rule or a behavior on a team member or a group that doesn't enjoy the experience of actually using that tool, then the adoption rate is very low and you get poor data out of it, right? But to John's point, the idea of the traffic lights or the I'm in use, I need to check in, the room is available. A lot of organizations, in my experience, are negotiating the expense of that and deciding if the initial expense is worth the end goal. And for those that are looking for those efficiencies, you'll definitely see an immediate return on that. And that becomes sustainable as well, because tools like room panels or desk signs are long-term sustained, right? They don't last like 2 years like your cell phone where you're buying something new every 2 years. They have longevity because they're supported long-term by the products or companies that you invest with. So.
Fabulous. And it's interesting because when you were sharing that, the point of where the decisions come from, right? So important that often, policies are made, decisions are shared, and for people to know where they came from, that, hey, this comes from the data we collected, this comes from the use of the space, that transparency and I think Erica had also shared, hey, we're still in a place of experimentation. We're figuring this out. I just am a big advocate for leaders to continue to be transparent and let people know where the decisions are coming from, and nothing like a data-informed decision. However, we know the data is only the one part, the rational. We still have people with emotional engagement. Like, we've got to have these conversations to engage people emotionally in the change, as well as give them the data to support rational understanding. All right, we have got a couple of great questions who've come in. Let's see, Catherine Canapelli. Is anyone here addressing plug load MEL's control using IoT and machine learning platforms? And I am going to be the one who says, please tell me what MEL means.
Sure. That means miscellaneous electronic loads or electric loads.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Our teams at Accruent, we do have software packages that deliver and expand upon that information directly. Some of our IoT tools are specifically meant to monitor and watch that information. When you're talking about plug load or MELs, which is miscellaneous electric loads, what you're actually talking about is the simple things that you might think about at home, like leaving your charger in all the time in the outlet, or keeping an LED light going 24/7. Those are those miscellaneous loads that might be missed in normal, surveys or reviews of your space, but do trickle in dollar amounts and energy load throughout the life cycle of your lease. So IoT, both in reporting and utilization statistics, give a lot of information back on that. There are ways to review that information with assumption, and there are ways to also review that through technology, actually having a system monitor the room, looking at loads from a specific area or zone within your system. Different buildings will have different technologies built in to support that. Others have applied smart outlets and lighting systems that report back on that through network connection or Wi-Fi or low-end Bluetooth, or like some of John's solutions where you have these mini devices that talk back to bigger devices that then send reporting information out to your cloud to give you that. Two of our tools that offer some of those solutions within our IoT space allow us to actually gather that and aggregate that data into valuable reporting that can say, against your energy footprint for your OEM or your energy management system, we've detected that 22% of it is using lighting that doesn't automatically turn itself off. So like Erica's situation where the room turns itself off, but that hall light might be on from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's 12 hours of energy that may go unused because nobody's walking down the hall. So those kind of things are definitely gatherable. And when you're talking about smart plugs and plug load, those kind of things can be gathered and brought into systems like ours or in the market.
Awesome. Thank you, Billy. We've got another question here. This came in from Menti. How has generative AI impacted the integrated facilities management throughout the different, real estate assets? And I think, Erica, you might have some thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I can kick it off. So we've actually been working with a lot of our clients on their IFM, so their integrated facilities management contracts. So as you can imagine, particularly with COVID, a lot of contracts are maybe 5-10 years old and are based on service level agreements and key performance indicators pre-pandemic. So we just talked about how ways of working is changing, when people are in the office is changing, how space is being used is changing. And a lot of our clients are looking back at their contracts now and saying, these don't match up to how our space is actually being used. So we're working with a lot of our clients now to reassess those IFM contracts to say, based on all of these trends happening in the market, either be ways of working, ESG and sustainability, new corporate real estate technology trends that, Billy and John have been talking about, all this needs to be implemented into the contract because the services that these facilities managers are providing need to be updated and matched up to these trends and being able to service the employees in the present day. So there's a lot of update going through on those service contracts.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Maybe
There seems to be... Yeah, please, John, go
Oh, no.
ahead. Go ahead.
Maybe I could touch on a little bit on the generative AI aspect. So lately we have been discussing with some clients on deploying, they call it what's called digital human technologies on the room panels that we have outside of the rooms. So basically, think of having a virtual receptionist in the office that you could call just by tapping the screen outside of the room. I think this is a great way to automate the facility management services through that touch interface. And given the latest technologies, there are ways you could achieve this without having a human staff being there taking the calls. A lot of things can be done through AI technology quite intelligently, improving the workplace experience at the same time.
And that's what I think is so exciting about where we're at right now and what we can embrace for technology and what it can do for us. However, John, I'm still sitting here saying, how come my laundry is not automated yet? Where's that interface? I need that in my life. Will you work on that?
We'll work on that.
All right. We have a great question here, or comment and question from Sabrina Nelson. She's saying the UK implemented office space hoteling and reservation systems over a decade ago. If we did not experience a pandemic, do you think U.S. companies would have implemented space reservation systems? What a great question. Anybody want to jump in on that one with your observations?
Yeah, I'll start if you don't mind. So my company that does space reservations as one of our primary products has been in business for 42 years. So it's definitely been out there in the market for a very long time. While it did originally start in the educational space, because a lot of academic organizations, colleges, universities, et cetera, they wanted to reutilize their space to make the most of their dollar and their footprint, right? So it became more about classes and now let's host events. Let's have outside, enterprise level conversations, connections, even just conferences or trade shows in our space to make use of that additional revenue. But that, of course, evolved, and it evolved across the market into professional services, legal, commercial industries, PwCs, Deloitte's, Accenture's, companies like that realize that this data that comes in, if nothing else, getting data back on the utilization of their space was paramount to keeping their budget in order with facilities. And that could be through lease administration, that could be through reservation sources, et cetera. But they also realized the human aspect. And of course, as market leaders, we try to help them with that. I think Erica and I both do that on a regular basis. But the idea there is the human element of knowing where you can book a space, feeling confident that you can walk into a building and have some place to go, have meetings on time, not be stuck with this double booking or this understanding that I'm just going to find an open room, or using technology like John's, where you see a green light down the hallway and you know that you can walk up to that room and book it for 30 minutes and get your meeting going without delay. All of those kind of things add up to a great solution and a return on investment, both in your employee experience, but also in your economic footprint. And so COVID did escalate some of that, right? So the idea of changing the way we work, understanding flexible space, moving into this kind of dynamic idea of maybe I don't want to come into work because I don't know how many people are going to be in there. All of that is facilitated by tools that allow your employees or organizations to look at that. So Lisa, if you had an office to go to and you had to make the decision of taking care of some things around the house as well as working from home or collaborating with your team, that decision might be predicated on you logging into a piece of software and seeing what members of your team are available and will be there, right? Because it wouldn't make sense if you show up and everybody logs in remotely, right? So those are the things that we look at as an addition to what people have already done in the footprint over the last 30 or 40 years.
Wonderful. Thanks, Billy.
I totally agree with Billy too. From the device side, we've started deploying these devices about 10 years ago. I think first with companies that are looking for better work experience for their employees, especially those who have a mobile workforce. People don't have to come into the office all the time. The sales teams, professional services firms, accounting firms. like that. It's just that COVID has, as Billy said, sped this up so much that now almost every company is looking at these as options to manage their flexible workplace.
Okay. That is awesome. And this conversation, I've learned so much already, and yet I also feel overwhelmed. So I know now I have 3 experts I can call on, and I hope the audience feels the same. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. And what I'd like to do is give each of you just sort of a parting takeaway. If people only remembered one thing after viewing or participating in this webinar, what would you want them to take away? And Erica, I'll start with you.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. So really, data is powerful, and there's an abundance of technology out there to implement. Just select those technologies that are aligned with your specific organization's needs. Some are more simple, standalone, whereas others are more complex, integrated tools that can cover many applications. They're all fabulous. Just make sure they fit your own specific needs.
Good advice. All right. Thank you, Erica. Let's go to Billy.
Sure. So I'll echo a little bit of what Erica said. I think that embracing and exploring technology, both software and hardware, would be the number one takeaway from any level of energy efficiency, lowering your carbon footprint, et cetera. All of that comes back to you through analytics and reporting, and you can't do that. As a human, you can't do that on just an Excel spreadsheet. You can't do that on just pen and paper. You do need some kind of analytics that can give you that detailed information. But to Erica's point, and one of the things I resonate as well is I would much rather you buy the right solution than our solution. So if you find that your organization doesn't fit 80 to 90% of what you're looking for in a software or hardware solution, don't fall back on it. There are a lot of choices out there, and there are very good ones that can both meet your price point and meet your startup costs, as well as immediately meeting the needs of your organization as you've assessed them.
Fantastic, Billy. Thank you. I love the integrity on that statement too. Thanks so much. And over to John.
Yeah, I'm actually going to follow what Erica and Billy said earlier. Just always be willing to try new technologies, and kudos to those who have already done the sensors. You've done, the collection part of the information. Now, I think it's the part of going in front of the employees and really giving them tools putting the tools in their hands so they could really maximize the benefits of the space for their benefits. So think about trying out a reservation system, thinking about having visible queues outside of spaces so people know what spaces they could easily take and use, as Billy described. And don't forget to tie these to your electrical appliances, your outlets, and make sure that the powers are really cut off when no one is using the room after the meeting is done. I think you're going to get great employee experience out of that, and you're going to save lots on energy consumption.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. So it sounds to me what I have heard is, first, make sure you know what problem you're trying to solve for, and to get real clarity around that, and then figure out some of the tools and options and do a little bit of research there. Again, I want to thank you all so much for being here and sharing your knowledge and wisdom and great experience. Thanks also to our audience participants for fully engaging and sharing great questions. I believe we're going to continue this conversation on LinkedIn. If there are other questions that were submitted we didn't get to, we're looking forward to hearing from you, and keep it going, because we're all trying to make a positive difference to make this world better. So thank you. Thanks to IFMA, and thanks again to John, Billy, and Erica for being here.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.